Okay, welcome back everybody to the Master Builder podcast. I am your host, Dr. Ayo Olatoye, and we're in a series where we're having conversations with men talking about their experiences and asking the question, 20 years ago, if you could meet your 20-year-old self or yourself 20 years ago, what advice would you give? This is a special episode because it's June, and June is the month of Father's Day. And I wanted to have a conversation with a good friend of mine who's my hero when it comes to parenting because he has four boys, count them, four. So without further ado, I always do with the guests on the podcast, please would you introduce yourself? Tell us everything you want us to know about yourself, and then we'll get going. Please don't hold anything back. Let us know who you are.
Thank you, Dr. Ayo, for the invitation and also for the opportunity today. My name is Dan Codjoe. Like you rightly said, I'm a father of four boys, and I have been in this, for quite a long time now. So there is a lot that I can talk about.
Yes.
I also come way back from Africa, Ghana. And I've been settled here also for quite a few years. So I have a bit of both worlds in terms of the upbringing in Africa and then also the one in the UK here. So that is about me.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're gonna unpick all the. I told Brother Dan before this we started recording that I want to mine all the experience that that he has. We're gonna make sure that he's empty by the time we finish. So we'll talk a bit about your upbringing. So tell me a bit about what it was like growing up in Ghana.
I think it was an interesting one at the time, because I had, a lot of siblings, around me at the time when we were growing. So it wasn't like a single child or, you didn't have people to, relate to or to learn things from because my dad, hosted most of his, nephews and nieces. So we were quite sort of like, a big family. So
And
growing up
it was
was
just expected, okay, there's other people in the house. Okay.
yes. Yes, because you didn't know some of them, where they came from
Yeah,
and
okay.
how they ended up, being with us. And I'm thinking, wow, we got a lot of people in here today. But then that is how, it was because I
Yeah.
think my dad wanted to, sort of like help them through education because most of them came from, outside of Accra, the city. So yeah, we had to live with them and grow up with them.
Yeah, okay.
Mm.
And so you don't have to tell us how old you are, but would you mind telling us what decade you were born in?
I was born in the early 70s.
Early 70s, okay.
Yeah.
So for those mathematicians out there, you
Yeah,
can
they can work it out. Yeah.
Right, okay. So you said you were in a big family. Now,
Mm.
do you remember your earliest dreams? I want to be this, I want to be that when you were growing up?
Yes, I think when I was young, I knew what I was good at because we could all, tell when we are good at something or we have a passion in doing something. So I think for me, what I thought or I knew I was good at was in sports because I used to, enjoy sports quite a lot. So football was my thing.
Okay.
There was not a single day that I didn't wake up and not think about football. You
Wow.
know, so every day when we woke up, if it wasn't a time of schooling, when we had breakfast, next thing is football. We have to step
Wow.
out there to go and play soccer.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was quite passionate with that.
So,
But
so
then,
an
like I
ideal
said,
that would have been the dream to be a
that was the
professional.
dream. Yes,
Really?
that was the dream. Yes, to
Wow.
become a professional footballer.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
So we'll come on to maybe what career course you had later, but that was the thing. Now, I'm a big believer in, the nature and nurture thing. We are who we are because of the intrinsic things on the inside, but also because of the environment. So were there any sort of explicit values or in hindsight, some implicit things that as a family, you knew these are the values that we have as a family growing up?
Yes, yes. The thing, I would say was that my dad, because like I said, he had quite a lot on his plate because he had, taking, other responsibilities on. He was not always around, because he was working full time, very busy, had meetings, had a church commitment and things like that. So he had principles.
Mm.
And I think that or those were the values that we, sort of, stood by or had to adhere to because he was a principled man. And he also knew that if you were disciplined in life, then you
Mm.
can achieve everything that you wanted to do.
So
So
these are things he said to you, or these are things he was like, okay, I guess this is what dad believes.
he said and imposed,
Mm.
some of them, and much to the fact that we also sort of, grew up with other people that were older than us, they were able to do things that we would also, emulate and say, oh, well, okay, I think we can also, strive to achieve what he or she is doing.
Okay.
So those were the values that, he put in place, that he wanted us all to, be educated. At least one day you can also fend for yourself or be responsible for your own self.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was something that, or were the values that, he put in place when we were young.
And was that was he like an exemplar of what fathers were doing at the time, or was there any way that your dad was different than his peers?
I think he was a bit different. Different in the sense that my dad was born in a village. Okay, so he was one of the indigenous people that studied and then came out of the village. Went
Mm.
into university, went abroad. To continue his education. Came
Okay.
back with a profession. And then was doing well for himself.
Mm.
So he knew that if you put your mind to something, you will
Okay.
be able to do it. And as much as you are committed,
Okay.
and you had that instinct to say that, well, these are my like a dream and
Yeah.
I've got to
Yeah.
chase it. So he wanted us all to, go through that in as much as he would live under his roof.
Yeah. And did he share his stories about his childhood and his journey and the education, or did you just know that it happened?
I think he shared it. I think he did, but we were very young at the time. And I remember my dad used to have he had gray hair quite early. So he would sit us down and he would say, oh, can you come and unplug these gray hairs out of my head? And that is when he started telling us all those stories, about his
Okay.
childhood and about, the school he went,
Yeah.
about how he related to people, his travel journeys and things like that. So, well, at the time, like I said, we were very young. So
Yeah.
it's not everything that I can recollect. But I
Yeah. Of
remember when
course.
he sat us down to do that, that was when
Yeah.
he used to tell us, things about himself.
Okay. And so um, I know some of the story, but I know that you didn't do professional football. So
Yes.
when did the dream change? How did you end up in the career? As a young as a let's say high school,
Mm.
were you still pursuing football then, or
I think I dropped it in high school.
okay?
Yes, because when I was in primary, the dream was there, the
Mm.
passion was there, and I was always in it. But I didn't drop it personally in the sense that, well, I wanted to chase it. I thought I was good at it.
Yes.
But then, at the time, it wasn't something that people really respected, especially in
Yeah.
Africa, because my dad wanted me to rather, further my education,
Mm.
become maybe an accountant because he also was one, you
Okay.
know. So he sort of like, I don't know how he did it, but then, because like I said, he was quite disciplined,
Yeah.
principled. He pushed me into, going after my academics.
Okay.
And bear in mind, I was also good at art, so it
Yes.
was
Yes.
also something that I could have, maybe had more passion to maybe, go into it. But then I think
Yeah.
because he was doing accounting and then
Mm.
also at the time I was looking at him as my mentor, I
Yes.
thought, well, okay, I would also, look into, that field.
Yes.
And he guided me to, at least go through those
Was there any
roads.
resistance on your part, or you were like, no, I trust my dad? he's shifted my focus. Let's go this way.
Yeah, I resisted, to be honest. Yeah, I resisted at the time, because it was something quite new to me. I
Yeah.
wasn't, so like, born for it. I didn't think it was my field, but then he was still insisting. So at the beginning, I was really resisting. I wasn't
Okay.
keen on it at all. It became a bit of an argument,
Okay.
but then I thought, well, I've got to, at least give it a go and then see what will be, in store for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm,
So you pursued um, accountancy,
yes,
and then was there a degree in accountancy?
yes,
Okay. And this is still
yeah.
in Ghana.
Sorry,
This is still in Ghana.
in Ghana, yes, and then I pursued, here also in the UK.
Okay. Fine. So the transition from Ghana to the UK, how did that come about?
Um, it started with when I finished, my national service. Like I said, my dad wanted me to be, into this profession. So he had a few friends that, used to work in, a few reputable, companies. So
Okay.
he introduced me to one of, the CEOs in one of the companies. So I started working, as a work experience sort of thing, and then I stayed there for a bit because I thought it was going to be quite, something temporal. But then I stayed there for quite a while. And then I gained more experience, and then one of the bosses that, he introduced me to also left the business. And then he said, oh, well, I want to open my own practice. So he did
Okay.
that. And then he invited me.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we had our own sort of setup and, we started working. So I did a lot of working in Ghana before coming to the UK. And, when you transition here, everything becomes different now.
Yes. Yeah.
You've got
Yeah.
to do a few other things before you can, be able to fit into the market
Yeah.
and also what people are looking at. So I studied back here again and then, had to get some courses on
Yeah.
before I started working again in the
And
UK.
were you married at this time, or
I wasn't married at the time.
so you
I
came to
was single.
Ghana single, and now
Yes.
sorry, the UK single, and now you've become a tribe.
Yes, I have.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
So, what was the I mean, this is as much as you want to talk about your relationship and your lovely wife. How did we get from okay, I'm single, I'm focused, I'm doing accounting to I think now's the time to
Yeah.
to
Yeah. I think before I came, I wasn't very desperate in sort of like, trying to get married because I
yeah,
wanted to, sort of like sort myself out, settle, make sure that I've got something doing, have a found base, before I can, look into that.
yeah,
So my now to be wife, we met in church. So
in
like
Ghana,
I said, no, in the UK.
in the
We
UK.
met
Okay,
here, yeah,
okay,
because I didn't know her from Adam, we just met in church. So she used to, lead praise and worship. I used to be
okay.
in the prayer team, so we're all doing our thing, and we're all in London at the time,
Yeah,
So we had church going on for about a year and a half or so. And then I relocated to Manchester, to come and pursue my course. So she was just a friend at the time, and I remember back in those days when we were in London, I used to drop them off at the church, with a couple of other friends.
yes,
So out of the blue, I was in Manchester and I had a phone call. And that was after a year and a half that I hadn't spoken or seen her.
yeah,
So she called and she said, oh, she's not seen me in church for, a while now. And I said, oh, I've relocated to Manchester. And she said,
okay,
oh, okay. And that was how the journey began,
okay.
So
And you called her back,
I
and
called her back, we had conversations. We stayed on the phone for quite a long time, more than
yeah,
usual.
okay.
And
Yeah.
then it just, one thing led to another in
So it
terms of
started as a
building the
long
relationship.
distance thing.
Sorry.
It started as a long distance thing.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay,
yes.
okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll maybe another day we'll delve deeper from a relationship point of view.
Yeah.
But today we're talking about fatherhood.
Fathers, yeah.
So how I know for my marriage, we were married and we had our son in our third year marriage. And when my son was born, everybody around us was like, "Oh, thank God!" Like as if they've been praying for us to
Mm,
have children. Did you have
yeah.
any sort of pressure when you got married to have children straight away, straight. Was it like
No, I didn't think we had any pressure because I think we had a child after the second year of marriage.
okay, okay.
So yeah, we didn't really have any pressure, and you know, they also start coming. I think after every other year,
Okay.
between them. So, and I remember when we got married, we were thinking of, what sex children do we, want to have, that
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of thing. Because, you can pray and believe God for something, God will, grant it unto you.
yeah.
So initially, I think, girls came into play. We were deliberating about it. And then my wife said, oh, I'm sure other think, if we had boys, it would be good because girls
Okay.
are a bit,
She prophesied.
she prophesied, so she prophesied all the four
Yeah, okay.
being boys.
Fair enough. Now, tell me about the first time. So were you in the room during delivery?
I was, the
Yeah,
first, I was.
first one. Okay, so tell me about the first time you became a father and like what that did to you. Did it change you in any way, or what was your recollection of it?
Yes, it really did, because it is an experience that, it really takes your breath, if you know what I mean, because I think at that time, I was there with my mother-in-law.
Okay.
And she also wanted to be in there. And for all you can only have one
Yeah,
family
okay.
with with the woman having the baby.
Yeah.
So she wanted to be there. I also wanted to be there. My wife wanted me to be there rather
Yeah.
than her being there, if you know what
Yeah.
I mean. So at one point, I wanted to give up. And I said, okay, you let your mom be there because probably maybe it might be too traumatic for me because I don't know, I'm not
Yeah. Yeah.
a
Not gonna.
woman. I don't know how
Yeah.
you go through, the pain and all that. But I
Mm.
stood by her, when she was in the hospital, and I said to her mom that I would rather, wish to go in there.
Yeah.
And it was a humbling experience,
Mm.
because to see sort of a reproduction of your own self, coming out,
Mm.
it was very humbling, because sometimes we take things for granted and we
Absolutely.
think, we're just there as being, people walking on the surface of the earth. But no, it was something that I would never forget ever in my life,
Mm.
ever.
And so I know for myself, yeah, so my wife had, quite challenging pregnancies and, the birth of our son was quite challenging. And so we had talked about children. Had you talked about how many children you wanted?
Yes,
So
yes.
was four the number?
No, it wasn't the number. We said a maximum will be three.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
we said
So
that maximum will be three.
we won't talk about who persuaded who for the last one. But I I'd always because I'm one of three.
Mm,
So there was always two against one, football, tennis. And so
yeah.
in my mind, conceptually, before I got married, was like, I want even numbers.
Mm,
Two is too few and six is too many. So I want four.
yeah.
That's what I wanted. But
Okay.
my wife had challenging pregnancies. I remember saying to my mom after my son was born, like if Lena wanted to stop with one, I would understand because it was very, very difficult. And like you say,
Mm,
very humbling. As powerful and whatever men believe themselves to be, every person alive has passed through the legs of a woman, or been held in the body of a woman. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that in the journey. And I think it's a good thing to be
mm,
there during the delivery.
yeah.
And it's a good support. For me, so it was a bit strange when I had my first son, my first child, my son, because obviously the woman has had 9 months to develop a relationship,
Mm,
and he knows when he's awake and when he's coughing and when he's hiccuping and when he's kicking, and like I understand that conceptually, but I didn't have anything, so I
yeah.
was very like, oh, it was almost surreal. Okay, this baby is my son.
Mm,
you,
mm,
you know,
yeah.
and I think for me, it became much easier when he was able to give me a reaction, and smile and turn
Mm,
and gurgle and respond,
yeah.
And when they started to talk, even better. So again, what was the initial few weeks and few months like for you?
So the first child
Yeah,
was born.
first one, yeah.
Yeah. I think even from, the hospital bed, when the child is born, because sometimes, you don't know where you are, what you're expecting.
Mm.
So baby comes out, baby starts crying, and at least that gives you a sigh of relief,
Yes,
oh,
yes.
she's, been able to do it, baby's fine, then they go in for all the tests and everything, but then we keep praying that, it is God that gives us everything. So
Yeah,
we have faith and believe that God is the one that has given us this baby and everything is fine with the baby.
yeah.
And I can attest to the fact that because we were praying even before pregnancy,
Mm.
because she also went through a bit of a challenging time, even with the first, child. Um, After, the baby came in, we brought him in. We were now thinking what name should we give to the baby, something
You,
to.
you hadn't thought about it before?
Sorry?
You hadn't thought about name before?
Well, we thought about it, but then, we had quite a few names,
Oh,
and then we,
right. You
we,
hadn't
we said,
decided.
okay, we
Okay.
will wait and see, the process through birth and everything. So at
Yeah.
least if we are glorifying God, we can say that this is the name we want to give to our baby. But
Yeah.
then we planned, we'd discuss some names, beforehand.
Yeah.
So after baby had come, we, ushered baby unto God and say, Father, we thank you for the life of this baby. We believe that you gave it to us.
Mm.
And baby is going to be under your care, under your guidance, under
Mm.
your tutelage and everything,
Mm.
And, every child is also different.
Yes.
So being a first child, especially for every mom,
Yeah.
they see that as precious as gold
Yes.
or as everything that you can think about,
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was a lot of dedication. There was a lot of impartation. There was a lot of, commitment in we parenting or, having time for, our first child.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Now, obviously, we're still talking about the very first early parts. Had you talked about parenting, um, or before, you and your wife, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Excuse me, this is how we're going to discipline. This is the values that we had. Had you had that conversation before the children were?
Yes, we had some conversation. I wouldn't say deep conversation,
Mm.
because um, we were then young, not matured or not, experienced in parenting. So
Mhm.
when we went through counseling, most of the things or much of the things that we learned was to do with our relationship,
Yes, of course. Yeah.
because then children will come in later.
Yeah.
So when children came in, we planned on how we would raise them, raise them up. And we also coming from Africa, we knew our upbringing was different.
Yes,
So there
exactly.
was that sort of, compromise saying,
Yeah.
no, we are now in a different terrain. So the way
Mm.
that we were brought up wouldn't be the same way that we can bring these kids up.
Okay. So you were intentional about, okay, we're not in Ghana anymore. So
Yes,
we're going to have to parent them with that understanding.
with
Okay.
that understanding.
Okay.
But then,
Fantastic.
like I said, I knew my father was a disciplinarian,
Mm.
so I have that, sort of thing in me a little bit.
Yes, yes.
So I said, at least we've got to, strike a balance. And at
Yeah,
least if
okay.
we want them to turn out well and, we want them to be the people that we
Yeah,
want them to be,
yeah.
we've got to at least, have
Okay.
some sort of discipline.
Now you're four children in, and your oldest is how old now?
My oldest,
Yes.
is 18 now. He turned 18 on Monday.
18. My goodness.
Yes.
So I have two questions. And the first question is, I think everybody who has multiple children suffers a bit with first child syndrome. So, in hindsight, are there things that you did for the first child that the subsequent children were like, we didn't need to do this? Like, what kind of examples of first child syndrome do you think you had?
Yeah, I think first child syndrome because they came in first, and we had him first. Like I said, we used to shower him with a lot of things,
Yeah. Okay.
everything that you can think of or that a child would get, he
Okay.
had it, So the only thing that I think the others might have missed out was that because they were the same sex, we thought, well, okay, he can use something or he can have something. If he doesn't need it anymore, It just goes down to,
Okay, so everybody else got hand me down.
yes, so they are sort of, getting things off him
Yeah,
because he's
okay.
got everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So, well, when he was young, like I said, he almost had everything that, he could imagine.
yeah,
And
okay.
the funny thing about him also was that because he came first, we thought we'll invest in him. We'll make sure that, he's good. He's also very strong-minded. He's positive-minded. He can be strong-willed to, be doing things on his own.
Yeah,
And it turned out like that, because he was very studious. He was very serious. He was very consistent.
yeah,
So if he asks for something, there's no bargaining chip here. You've got to
yeah,
at least give the reward because we
yeah,
thought he
yeah,
was
yeah.
that good.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And so the first question was first child syndrome, and I suppose the second question was how did your parents, both sides, react to? Was he the first grandchild or
No,
no?
he
Okay,
wasn't.
so how did they react to this grandchild?
Yeah,
Was
they
there
were
any
very happy. Very, I think he was the second grandchild.
okay,
He
okay,
was, yeah. But they, like I said, they were very happy, especially from, my in-law side. Very, very happy because I think, my wife is the first of, her dad, so, I mean, from the mother side,
yeah, okay,
so they were very excited, very
okay,
pleased. The same also was from my end, and like I said, it was quite honorable, if I can put it that way,
mm,
because it is something that every, grandparents, would
yeah,
always be looking out for,
yeah, yeah,
because
of course,
they know that we've come together, but then what they are expecting is to
yeah,
have grandchildren,
yeah, okay,
that they can relate to.
yeah.
Mm.
Now, one I was very intentional when my children were born about like let me study what fathers are like and parents are like. And did you do any of that yourself in terms of okay, so where did you get your blueprint for the kind of father that you are? Where did you get that from?
I think I got that from, um, I would say, a pastor friend of mine.
Mm,
And that was one back home and then also another here because I wanted to have, that sort of, mentorship, somebody that I can aspire to, become. Because somewhere along the line, as I was growing up, I thought, well, there was something missing because I had not really committed to, have a balanced life, if you know what I mean. Because going through school, having to work at an early age, having some money, you could just be swayed into doing all sorts.
yeah,
So I had a pastor friend, back in Ghana that I always looked up to. And I think he is my inspiration. And he made me to, switch off from engaging in things that, so to speak, wouldn't really, help me get to where I wanted to get to.
yeah.
So I always look up onto him. And I think he's the pastor of International Central Gospel Church. If you know about him, Dr. Mensa Otobo.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't
So
know that.
he was really somebody that, I would say his sort of teachings, gave that blueprint for me to
Mm,
be able to, walk on that. And also gave me that confidence to be able to do or get to where many things that I got involved in before I became born again, they are not things I can be proud of.
During that question, we lost you for a bit. So would you mind just repeating that?
Oh, okay.
The signal. Sorry.
Yeah. I said, the blueprint for my life was, the help in my life. She came to the UK I still,
Oh,
listen to.
I'm so sorry, brother Dan. I don't know what's happening with your I'm assuming it's your internet because I'm next to my
All right,
but
because you were frozen for a minute.
yeah, so I wasn't able to hear what
Okay,
you're saying.
let me check my internet.
Sorry.
It's okay. Am I okay now, or is
Yeah,
it still frozen?
it's fine now.
Is it fine now?
It's fine now. Yeah, I don't know what
It
it
could
is.
have been a glitch or something.
Yeah,
Okay, so
but
can we go over that one again?
yes, please, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So, like I said, I had that blueprint from this mentorship that I had with Mensa Otabil, pastor of International Central Gospel Church at the time, way back in Ghana.
Mm,
He had also a principled way of living through the scriptures, and he helped us, myself together with a couple of other friends, to be able to, steer us up and make us to be able to be on the right path, for us to be responsible adults, as we were growing up. So I would say that he is one of them. Apart from my dad, he is one that I also look up to very well, even now, and I still continue to, have so much respect and admiration for him.
okay, fantastic. And um, because I think you're touching on something that's really important. One of the biggest hacks, life hacks, if you will, or keys to success is mentorship.
Mm,
Like you're saying. So I think
mm,
in any area, there's probably somebody who may have done the thing that you're doing before. So seeking it out, I think is great. And I just like you say, I think sometimes some of the struggles that we have, having somebody who might be 10 years ahead or
mm,
5 years ahead, to be able to say, okay, well, not even necessarily to ask. And I think it's good to say, okay, please tell me what you do in this situation. But sometimes it's good to have somebody in your circle that you can just observe and say, okay, so this is how he deals with and when his children are this is how he deals with his emotions. I think that's a very, very important thing
mm,
and a big nugget for people who are listening.
yeah.
So would you mind just reminding me the ages of your children? As we talked about 18,
I've got 18.
yeah,
I've got 16,
16,
13,
13,
and then 10.
and 10. Wow. Wow. Okay. So
Mm.
again, I have to give you a round a round of applause. Okay.
Yeah.
So when when I started on the fatherhood journey, I heard people say that different stages have different challenges. So in your on obviously every child is different, but like in your own mind, is there a strategy for dealing with, let's say, the first 5 years and then the next 5 years and then the next 5 years? Because you've got the first 15 years, covered. Did you have a strategy in your mind, or in hindsight, if you were to give advice to somebody who is a dad of a 2-year-old today, what would you say? And then a dad of a 7-year-old and a dad of a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I think with the first one, I didn't have a clear strategy, to be honest with you, because, when you give birth to a child, you wouldn't think that, he's always just going to be just like you, the way you are, the way you do things, it could be different. So
Mm,
I didn't have a clear strategy. Or I think what I put my mind to was to look at him,
mm,
see how he's developing, see how I can help him to align with the things that would also help me nurture him,
okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I started observing him. And like I said, with him being the first, and then when we had him, had the others, it was quite a smooth one. We didn't have, a lot of challenges with it. It was after when the second and then the third one came in.
Okay.
And I said, well, I think we've got to now juggle things properly
Okay.
together to be able to, find a way of, making them to grow and live amongst themselves to help each other, do things that would make them to, bond together.
Yeah. Okay.
So with the first one, I didn't really have a clear strategy, but then we sort of, um, looked at him as he was growing and then where we can, chip in to do something to, give him that stability. That was what we did.
Okay. So I hear you saying that it's an individualized approach
It
because some,
is.
some people are very much like, my child will be X and there's no discussion.
Mm,
You know?
yeah.
Whereas, what you're saying is that what has been your strategy is there's something in this child. So my job is let's how can I nurture that? In fact,
Yes.
let me ask you because I for me, the way my brain works is I like to reduce things down to the really most common thing. So
Mm.
for you, what is the purpose of parenting or fatherhood? Like, what's the point of it? What's the goal, if you will?
Yeah, I think the purpose or the reason for parenting
Mm,
is a deep question. This
mm,
and you've got to look at it from I would say the godly sort of aspect, and for the youth that I sort of teach. When God gives you something, He said to us that it is good.
mm,
So if you do not have that at the back of your mind, you wouldn't be able to treat that good thing that God has given to you as being precious,
mm,
And we should also know that children, Bible says that they are a blessing from God,
mm,
and a man's quiver should be full of them.
mm,
So I had this at the back of my mind. God has given me this blessing.
mm.
How do I nurture this child in the way that God wants me to do? So a lot of wisdom needs to come in here
Yeah, okay.
because, like I said, if you have more than one child, every child will be different, in their way of thinking, in their approach to things, in
Yeah,
the way they would even relate to you.
yeah.
But then what you can see is that you've got a reproduction of your own self here.
Mm,
And mine being the same sexes, I knew that they cannot, because they are not twins, that they would never be the same.
mm.
So I sort of, humbled myself, from what I used to be to become a new person,
Okay,
because then that would give me that spirit of accommodation for each and every one of them.
okay, okay.
So that is the kind of approach that I had with my, other half, that we were like this before, but we cannot continue being like
Mm.
that before. Now
Oh,
we are
oh,
different now, and this
you,
is our immediate family.
you had a explicit conversation. We need to change
Yes,
from this to this.
yes. And
Okay.
even up on, well, till now, we still have
Oh,
conversations,
fantastic.
on that,
Okay, okay.
so there are a lot of, changes that come into play
Yes.
when they come in, and, how you've got to, talk to them, lead them, show them things.
Yeah.
You've got to change your whole personality.
Yeah, okay.
Mm,
Now talk to me about so we've talked a bit about your first son, but talk to me about maybe the difference in your children and as a consequence, the different strategies you have had to use to get the best out of them.
okay. So they all being different, okay, but then they've all got their unique abilities. You
Yes.
remember I said to you that the first one is very good in art,
Yeah.
you know, and I never saw that coming
Yeah.
because I only thought he was just good academically, and that was what he used to do.
Yeah.
If he was given homework, when he comes back from school, he would do nothing than rather finish the homework and
Mm.
then ask for more. You
Oh,
see,
wow. Okay.
so I thought he was that kind of Einstein,
Yeah.
genius person that he wanted to be.
Yeah.
So I never saw the art coming from anywhere at all. And it
Okay.
was until when he was about 9, 10
Mm.
that he started doing art. And I thought, oh, where did you get the, passion to, go into art? He said that has already been there. It's just that he didn't find the time to do it because he rather spent more time in, his academics,
Yeah.
reading
Yeah.
and then doing his homework and things like that. And the second one is also very good with electronics, gadgets, animation, things like that. It
Yes.
was also just natural.
Mm.
So I saw that, well, everybody's got something in them.
Mm,
The
mm,
third
mm.
one is also a vocalist.
Okay.
He can be a journalist for the world. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
Jason.
Yeah.
And the fourth one is also somebody who cannot wait to grow at all. He's got a mind of who can I, relate to. He's got a mind of, somebody great.
Yeah. Yeah.
He cannot wait to grow.
Yeah.
He's also a very good sports person. You
Okay.
see,
So you,
so
you've got a
I looked at
fantastic
that.
mix there. So like with their differences,
Mm,
how do you like in the context of football, we talk about man marking. So I play against this person like this. but I play against this person like that. So as a dad, I'm thinking, okay, I have a genius who's good academically, and I have somebody who loves talking, and I have somebody who, just wants to develop his mind. I have somebody who is great at animation. Now that they will have their great characteristics, and they'll have their things that as a father you're thinking, okay, we need to work on this, but they're not the same person.
Yeah.
So how do you like do different strategies for your parenting for different personality types?
Yeah. So I think because they all have their different, talents or abilities, as you can put it, what I did was, to draw a rota, have a bit of sort of like a planner or a calendar for each and every
Okay.
one of them. So I can spend time, you know, um, nurturing that gift.
Okay.
And I think this became even more apparent, during COVID time, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
So I said, because things have changed now, how do I, take this to the next level?
Yeah.
So during COVID, we had time on our hands because then we were all at home.
Yeah.
Nobody could go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I seized that opportunity. I grabbed them. I said, look, for you guys come in here.
Mm.
I think we can do something here because the vision, excuse me, the vision that God gave to me was that in this family, we will be, excuse me, we will be people that can impact the lives of other people.
Mm.
So the idea of reaching out was there. God said,
Okay.
you guys can become something like a band, okay?
Okay.
That you can really reach out to people.
Yeah.
So during COVID, I bought all kinds of instruments that you can name,
Yeah.
I had them stocked in the house.
Yeah.
And I said, come on, we've got to do something here. And I
Yeah.
remember the church that we used to, attend. During Easter, they said, oh, every family should put up a song,
Okay.
do a song, put it on either YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever,
Yeah.
send it to the church like a competition.
Yeah.
They will see who, comes up on top and they'll get a prize for it. And lo and behold, we went in there in the conservatory. Said, let us, put up a song. So myself, my wife, four boys. Jerome was on the keyboard.
Yeah.
I said, I will sing. Sheila said she will sing. Jew said he will sing.
Yeah.
Jason said he will play, I think, something. And then within 10, 15 minutes, we put up a song, and then we posted it out there. And we came out as the winners, for
Oh,
that
wow.
within a very short space of time, you see.
Yeah.
So I realized that I could, do something with each and every individual, if I can just let them to hone in on something that they can add as an additional,
Yeah. Okay.
talent to what they already know.
Yeah.
And I also saw that music was something that also calms people down. It makes you to be able to, be reserved,
Yeah.
think about nature, think about the environment, think about, who you are as a person.
Yeah.
So that is something that I engaged them in and had a planner for them. And I said, look, you've all got to, pick up an instrument
Yeah.
and make it your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Good. Are they still doing it now, or is it?
They are doing it now. Some
Yeah.
are a bit, thinking I've got, I've got an exam, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really,
Exactly. I mean,
but as and when they have the
keep
time, they
going.
do.
So, I mean, I'm in my 40s and I play the guitar.
Mm,
And because sometimes I speak to parents and they feel, oh, should I compel them? And I mean, so I'm in my 40s. I play the guitar relatively well. Um,
mm,
and everybody that I know who is my age, who is able to still play something that they learned when they were a child, had a period where they were compelled to continue.
mm.
So,
Yes.
and almost everybody that I know at my age who started learning something like an instrument in childhood and can't play it now says they wish that their parents had made them. So,
Mm.
you
That was
know,
the same with me,
yeah,
because when I was young, the keyboard was my favorite instrument. I
okay,
wanted to play the keyboard.
yeah,
So anytime we went to church, I was so keen on, knowing how to play it. But then I didn't get the opportunity to get somebody to teach me
yeah,
how to play it. So I said, no, I have to do something different with my children.
yeah, yeah, I understand. Now, obviously, so again, you're working as an accountant. You're married. You have four children, four boys,
Yeah,
and that's a lot.
it is.
How do you balance all?
Well, yeah, you remember, I think we went back a little bit. I said we planned on three.
Mm,
Okay, so the four came in, and then I thought, well, okay, it's going to be a bit, challenging or a bit, some responsibility here.
Yeah.
So I now, like I said, everything has to now, start becoming different about you. If you want to make time, if you want to have that, capacity to be able to look after, these kids.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that I couldn't engage in anymore, and rather spend time to, at least look after them or give them the solid foundation that they
Yeah.
need so that at least when they grow, Bible says that they will not depart from it. And also, like I said, God gave me a vision when I came into this country
Okay.
that I would have to, be reaching out to the youth, So I thought, well, I'll get them on board. So when Jude and Jerome were about 10, 11, I got them onto my, platform. That was back in, COVID time, about almost 5.5 years ago, that they joined this platform that I can, bring out their gifts, talents, and abilities in them. So that when they are confident to know what they hold or what they have in them, nobody can tell them otherwise.
Yeah. You mentioned the platform twice. So talk to me, about the platform, the name of it, how it started, and what your goal is with it.
Yeah, so the platform or the name of the vision is called the League of Talents and Abilities. So this is to do with the up and coming youth or teenagers that haven't really found their place yet, because I've been there before. And when you turn 10 to the age of 18, that is when you need to be able to get something under your belt, because there is always that possibility that if you do not learn certain things early enough, you would always procrastinate, to say that excuse me, to say that I've still got time ahead of me, I can really make time for all these things, but time does not wait for anyone. So the earlier you get to know who you are, what you represent, what is ahead of you that you need to be able to do to be able to, sort of become that person that God wants you to be, the earlier, the better. So it is a platform to nurture them, to make them to have a solid foundation in life, to make them to be able to voice out when they believe that what they stand for is the truth and not anything else, the better it is for them. Because for what I saw when I came into this country, with a youth, that was what God led me to be able to come up with this vision, to be able to catch them young, these kids, before they become, adults. And then it's very difficult and challenging to tell them otherwise.
So the League of Talents and Abilities.
And the League of Talents and Abilities, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. And this is something that you do on Zoom.
I do on Zoom once a week, every Friday.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We'll put how people can contact you if they want to engage with that.
Yes.
Is there a demographic that you prefer to see?
I think, well, with the age limit, I'm looking at, people from between the age of 10 and 20 for now.
Okay.
Yeah. And there is no limitation, to where I want to, outsource the people from, because I've even got people from South Africa now that are joining, this session every Friday.
Yeah.
So I'm trusting God that, we will be able to take it to, another level.
Yeah.
And see if we can also be meeting, in person, at one point,
That's the
we
goal.
can hold a conference or something like that to get all of, the youth together.
The League of Talents and Abilities.
Talent and Abilities.
Please keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned your children. You said some J names. Now I know that they've all got J names. Why? What was the reason?
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I would say I don't know why, because I came from also a family of D's. My father named us, yes, all D's.
Okay.
So maybe, I thought, well, we just picked up a J, at first, to give to the first one. So after the first one, we said, okay, we will carry on with J's then.
Okay. So let's go through them. Number one.
Number one is Jerome.
Jerome. And
yes.
And I know that in our house, the meaning of the name was something really important. So was that something that you and your wife were thinking about and saying, okay, so this name sounds nice, but it means this, and that's the like what was the rationale?
Yeah, in fact, his name, we looked at it. It was a bit like a French name, meaning was in. But then because he had a middle name, and also we gave him his native name, like back,
Yeah.
home in Ghana, we gave him also a name.
Mm.
We associated that name and the
Okay.
meaning
Yes.
more to his name rather than his.
The whole of his
Yes.
names, all the. So I mean, I think I have five or six. They're not all on my birth certificate, but they were all given given to me.
Okay.
Jerome is number one. Number
Yeah.
two,
It's Jude.
Jude.
Yeah.
Number three
And then
is
three, Jason
and number four,
for Joshua.
Joshua. Fantastic, fantastic. So at least in your family culture, you were comfortable with everybody having the same letter. You just
Yes.
you just
Yes.
chose J.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Now, as a father, when I look at my son, Ezekiel, I see myself. Because he looks like me, has mannerisms like me, and sometimes I recognize some of my characteristics now and characteristics then. And parenting him has taught me so much. So, what is something that each of your children has taught you?
Yeah. I think I remember I mentioned this to you, I think maybe on a one-to-one at home somewhere, I can't
Yeah,
remember,
okay.
but I said to you that my first and then my third, they are similar
Yes,
in
one and three.
behavior. Yes. And then the second and the fourth are also the same.
Yeah.
So the first one, I see myself in him. And then
Mm,
also the last one, funny enough.
yeah.
The second and third, I don't. I see their mom in them.
Okay, yeah,
You
okay,
see,
yeah.
so it's a whole sort of dynamics that
Yes,
doesn't
of
really,
course, yeah. Mm,
it's sort of like intertwined anyway. But then, yeah, so the first and then the last, I see myself in them.
mm.
They are just like me in appearance, in looks, in nature, and then, and in behavior, you
And
know.
is there
And
anything that parenting them has taught you?
yeah, so all four or those two. Any
Anyone
of
goes,
them.
yeah.
All right, okay. So yeah, the first one, parenting him has taught me a lot, in terms of humility,
Mm,
and also accommodation,
mm,
in terms of how you need to be able to come to some sort of level to be able to guide him or to be able to show him things that he would be able to understand, especially now that he's 18,
yeah,
because very soon he will be a man of his own
yeah,
and he will be, out of your house. So you've got to make sure that before he leaves, he is going with something that you've deposited in him.
yeah.
So he has taught me a lot in being humble,
Mm,
in being reserved, with the way you approach things,
yeah, okay.
the way you sort of, reactive into things,
Mm,
and the way you also look at things from, a different perspective. Because bear in mind, because they were born here, they have a lot of, different aspects to the things that we, know than
yeah,
what they know. So
yeah,
you've got to come to that level, you
yeah.
see. So, like I said, the way I was brought up, it is a whole different ball game now. So he has taught me a lot to become a different version of myself that I
Mm,
used to be, and now I am that new person. And I take credit in that.
mm. Okay. What about the other three?
Yeah, the other three, I think the second one is lovely Chobley. I've got nothing, against him. He is good. Everybody is different. But like I said, he is good. He is very, into what he's also doing. He's helpful. He comes to you when he thinks he's got an issue. So he's also somebody that I think down the line, he's helped me to make him to, own up, to become somebody that can also be very responsible at an early age, you see,
Okay.
because he was always looking up to his brother. But
Yeah.
then I said to him, you are a man of your own. You
Mm,
can also, do things that even your older brother can ask, oh, how did you get to know this? Or how,
yeah.
you can be teaching, you don't have to always let people teach you. So now he does things that he takes responsibility and say, well, I think I've got to do this without being told to do it.
Okay.
And those are the sort of, guidelines and principles that I taught them, that you've always got to go for something, that you believe in your heart that it is a good thing to do. And as much as you believe it is good, you've got to go for it. Don't wait for somebody to tell you to do it. And that is what he has done. Third one, Jason, like I said, he can talk for the world. So he's quite really very confident.
Yeah.
And he's somebody that, very sociable. Everywhere that he goes, he would leave something behind for people to talk about, So he's also somebody that, we look up to. And we've always been saying to him that, Jason, you're going to become a journalist in future, But he's quite young. He doesn't really know what he entails. He's thinking that, well, I want to do business. I would think that, yes, you've got this in you.
Yeah.
And Joshua, he's also somebody that I think out of the four, he has, brought a lot to us. Because Joshua, like I said, we won at 3. That was what we had planned. And then Joshua came in, so as the fourth. And, God is, we all know God is a God of wonders. I think for what I had in mind, thinking that, with 4, it's going to be very challenging. It's going to be difficult. Are we prepared for this? Have we got plans, to do 4?
Yeah.
It has been, really very good, because he has brought something in. It gives us, more joy, if that makes sense, And he's also the person that we think he has got a lot in him that we've got to also nurture.
Yeah.
Like I said to you, he doesn't, or he can't wait to grow up, to become, that man. He's even said to us what, he wants to do, how many kids he wants to have at that very young age.
How many children he wants to have?
I am telling you, So he's a man of deep thoughts, you see. And I look at him and I'm thinking, well, what an admiration, what a lovely chap.
Yeah.
And he's good at so many things. Very, very good at so many things.
So, so one of the things I realized about parenting, so I have 3, Ezekiel, Hannah, and Sophia. Like I said, Ezekiel, I see myself in him. But also I think that I recognize that my reactions to them are based on where I am, So in a situation where I'm having a good day or whatever, I can react well. And I mean, I've had to start to parent myself, maybe in the way that I didn't have it growing up, so that when I respond maybe to a challenge or to a difficult situation, I'm giving them my best self. Like, have you found, so we understand the concept of emotional intelligence. So at work, emotional intelligence is knowing how I feel and what's going on with me, and being able to be there emotionally for somebody else. And there are times when I'm looking back at how, I grew up, and there are things that I want to course correct and maybe do slightly differently. So one of the things is the ability to so I need to deal with what I'm dealing with. Because if I don't deal with what I'm dealing with, then the way that I show up at home is going to be either unnecessarily harsh or heavy. So I deal with what's happening on the inside of you, and release that, and then you can be present. Like, have you found that to be your experience as well?
Yes, I think every single day, when you wake up, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror, to understand who you really are. I look at that a lot. And I look at that, and also look at my children or look at my immediate family. And I sometimes, think, where are we on? Because for everything that we do, or I sort of, look at, is that we're on a journey here. So we're going somewhere.
Yeah.
So for the things that I do now, which I didn't used to do before, because when I was young or when I was growing up, I used to be an introvert, and possibly rightly so. I'm still one anyway. I'm not really very, the outspoken person like my wife. My wife is an extrovert, but I'm a different version of myself now. And like I said, this is, with the introduction of, you now becoming a parent,
Mm.
because it opens you up to a lot of things, and you've got to now be responsible for a lot of things.
Yeah.
So you would hardly even, but like I said, in those days, see me standing in front of a crowd or talking to people. I wouldn't do it because
Yeah.
that wasn't me. But
Mm.
all those things have changed now. And none of my kids, I would say to you today, are introverts. They are all
Okay.
extroverts, you see. And they will speak their mind. Well, then it's also to do with the environment or where they are growing up, because what they are exposed to are not the things that we got exposed to because we had a bit of limitation. So I think that also plays a bit of a part,
Mm.
in us.
Mm.
But we thank God that that they haven't got that place in them to go through that,
Yeah.
because everything is at their it's at their expense now,
Yeah.
and they can just use it for their own advantage.
I understand. Now,
Mm,
you've got four boys.
yes.
Not to characterize, but boys are boisterous, and energetic, and I think it's necessary and important for a dad to impose discipline. Now, what's your approach to to discipline? And that builds, not breaks a child.
Yeah.
What's your approach?
I think initially I was struggling, with the approach, because we thought, oh, well, can we use, the sort of system back home a little bit, here? Because all we knew or what we used to call was that spare the rod and spoil the
Yeah,
child,
yeah.
that sort of thing. But then, it's different on everyone.
Mm.
If a child wants to, like you say, and I've got boys, and boys are boisterous.
Yeah,
If they want to be stubborn, they will be stubborn. It
yeah,
doesn't really matter what you do.
yeah,
And as they're growing up, sometimes they know that certain things favors them. So if you're always going with the stick, it will not, be the right approach.
yeah.
So I thought, well, okay, I've got to bring them all together, find an approach or something that everybody enjoys, doing. So we used to go out a lot when, they were all, quite young. I think the oldest was in about 11, 10, that
Okay.
sort of age. We go to the park, we have fun times. We go to, theme parks. We have, all those fun memories are there. We
Yeah.
took pictures, had a laugh, had meals and things like that. And that is that sort of, bonding, knowing that they um, had people that had time for them. I think because it is also something that we've got to look at as parents, because no matter how busy you are, you've got to make time for your children. Because one thing I realized was that if you don't make time for your children, that is when they now become wayward, because it is like you are present, but you are still absent.
Mm.
They know that they're having parents, but parents are always not there.
Mm.
So when we were growing up, or when we got married and we were, in the relationship, I think we discussed about, what we wanted to do by way of, career, so that at least we can always be there, for them. And it will not always be the case. There will be
Yeah.
times that, you can't make it, but then you've got to make sure that you really devote time and attention for the kids, because
Yeah.
when they know that you have their best interest at heart,
Mm.
they have the confidence, to, do what you ask them to do. And I
Mm.
think that was the approach that, we used, that we will be there for them. So at least when you discipline in them, they only don't think that you always, pulling the stick
Yeah.
and,
So they have, the
yes, to
reference.
have that balance,
Yeah.
sort
Okay.
of, parenting for them.
And
Mm.
obviously you mentioned that you're a Christian and you had a vision of God for your family. Like, how does your faith, and your relationship with God, influence your parenting?
Yeah, I think it goes way back also when we were young, because our parents did the same thing, that they will put us, through the Christian faith. We go to church, Sunday school, get to know about God, the Bible and things like that. So we had that sort of, beginning. We had that foundation, to be able to know about God. So if we had any challenge here, as we now being parents, we always resorted to God,
Mm.
because we believe that God is the one that had the answers that would be able to help us get out of any kind of challenges that we're having, be it parenting or be it provision, being responsible for one person or the other.
Yeah.
We always resorted to God. And the word of God has also been our sort of, anchor that we hold on to.
Mm.
And we've also been able to, help them do the same. So we always have devotions with them. We always have quiet times with them.
Mm.
Prayer, also we do that, anointing them with the oil.
Mm.
So we made sure that these things are there so that, they would also be very familiar. That,
Yeah.
as much as they go out there out of, our presence, when they are out there, they know what they've been taught. So when somebody says something that is contrary to what you wouldn't just hunch on it and
Yeah.
then, follow after them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mm,
I have a unique perspective because I'm a pastor's kid.
mm,
I think that it's all of the stuff you're saying is very, very good. And we have the same in our house. We have Bible time, and I think maybe one of the things I think I'm doing slightly different to what my parents my at the time there was this big thing about secular versus Christian in terms of like entertainment and time and spent. And so therefore um, if it wasn't a Christian movie or Christian music, it was frowned upon. And I think different people have different. I don't think it's right or wrong. The only issue I see is that sometimes when you have such strict um, issues from an exposure point of view, when somebody then grows up and then has access to everything, that person can go overboard, because it's like the first time they take sugar with no restraints. Just,
mm,
So one of the things that I wanted to do is my mum said of my dad, when he passed at his funeral, that he made Jesus so big that we couldn't miss. And I
mm,
love that description.
mm,
Our relationship with God is very real in our house.
mm,
And so we watch movies together. They're not necessarily Christian movies, but I try to talk to them. We have books. My children are avid readers, and I can't keep up. So there was a time when it was like, okay, let me see the book before. But now it's the case of, okay, you're going to be exposed to stuff, and obviously
mm,
we have to have a threshold. Like you're not reading, books for 18-year-olds and stuff when you're 13, and we're not watching 18 movies and stuff like that. However, we're in the world, so let's watch a movie. Let's talk about the themes. Are there any? This guy wasn't a good guy? Why wasn't he good? This guy was good. Why was like so that we're thinking things
yeah.
and so there's you have your own Bible, you have books all around, you have so that we're normalizing the being in the world, but not of the world. So our identity as Christians, and I coming from a Christian home, is that's just standard. But it's not like as soon as you go to somebody else's house or to another place, the sugar of secular something is just
Mm,
overwhelming, and you now lose your mind.
yeah.
So that's something that we have done in our house. Um, Another question. So so I've heard different things in this regard. So my opinion is children are the purest form of human nature, in that for most children I know, you don't have to teach them to be self-centered or to not share or to lie or to misbehave. Most babies and toddlers and stuff will have a natural inclination to that. And one of our jobs as parenting is saying, okay, this is not, a way to behave. So no, you need to share. Okay, say please, thank you. Okay. So and I've heard different people talk about lying. Oh no, it shows good development for your children to lie to you. And some people who are like, okay, well, we want to teach them the principle of being a truth teller and honest. So how do you create an environment where your children can be honest with you?
Um, yeah. I think, like you just said before, that, you know, um, some parents will, say that it is good for their kids to lie, or they would, make their kids to believe that it is good to say, some sort of a little lie and get away with it.
Mm.
But that is not the case. So, like I said, it was through the sort of, family time that we were having together that we were able to, relay this, information to them, in the sense that you've always got to do what is right, because when you do what is right, you get a reward for doing what is right. Nobody punishes somebody for doing something that is right. So we always said to them, if you are responsible for something, you've got to own up for it. And these are times when we did devotion, and then it brings everybody's mind to what the scripture said. And then they were able to believe that what we're saying is not just us saying it, but it is the word of God. Because everybody believes, or every child, in as much as you would say that this is what God said, they can, relate to it in a way than you saying that this is my word. So we brought the scriptures into it and made them to understand that in this life you are blessed, or you are rewarded both from God and also from your earthly fathers or parents if you are always, doing the right thing, being truthful about yourself, and being an example for other people to also, follow.
Yeah, so obviously that's a great example, and children are human. So let's say you catch them in a lie. What's the response in that situation?
Yeah, if I caught them, lying, which I have done on numerous occasions, some will own up to it.
Yeah,
I am wrong, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Others would, say, oh, well, I didn't do it, when you know that they did
Know
it.
that they,
So then you've got to now, work out a situation where you
yeah,
can now say, well, you've done the thing. You don't need to, lie about it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know you've done the wrong thing, So you've got to, I know you're young, but you've got to accept that you've done the wrong thing.
yeah,
The better way to, be free from any sort of, trouble is to, accept it, and then we move on from there. Because, like I said, they're all different. Some will own up, others will, give it a day or two, trying to play about the bush, to test you, see what your reaction is going to be like
yeah.
before they accept, the wrong that they've done.
Yeah, I mean, just like we
Mm.
mentioned before about becoming a different person, one of the things I had to recognize is that if I am not careful, my reaction to the thing that they're doing that I don't like might open the door or close the door to the
Mm.
feeling that they can come and talk to me.
Yeah.
So I need to create an environment. So my job is to be sturdy. So my job, like I'm in charge of maintaining the the boundaries.
Yeah.
However, I still want to create an environment where you can kind of come. So there are going to be some things. In fact, one of the things I believe God was helping me understand a few years ago was I had to ask myself, other than the fact that I don't like it, what is wrong with it? And that's not how I believe that I was parented, because a lot of the things that in hindsight, it wasn't even wrong or sin in that sense. It was okay, you don't like it. So it became a mandate from my parents, okay, don't do this. Whereas when I've done my own studies and I've become my own man, the thing itself is neither it just wasn't your preference. So because I am trying to make sure that my children's reality is based on, like you say, an understanding of what the word says, and and colored as little as possible by me.
Mm.
If just because I don't like it isn't necessarily a reason not to do it. So
Mm.
I had to realize there's some stuff I had to swallow. I know I don't like it, but it's not wrong.
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially in a leadership position, that you can have a power trip and think, oh, just because I don't like it, that's enough to
Mm.
close it down. But it's not. Um, is there anything? What's one thing your children don't know about you? Is there anything, or have you been an open book? They know they know all the stories.
Not everything, no.
What's one thing that would surprise them about you?
I think what would surprise my kids about me is that I am a very good actor.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I see myself as a very good actor. I know you're
Fantastic.
laughing.
Yeah, no, no, I'm not. I'm not. I'm not.
But then, yes.
Just the idea of it.
But they don't know that about me,
Okay.
But then I know I can be a very good actor. I can
Okay.
be on the Nollywood stage, Hollywood
Fantastic.
stage, be amongst,
Yeah, yeah.
celebrities and be in a very good either drama
Okay.
or action, whatever. I think I am good at,
So
acting.
anybody who's listening who's looking for, a gentleman, so we're black. So anybody, so from 30 to 60,
Yeah.
please call Brother Dan.
Yeah. So that is
Fantastic.
something I think I'm hiding under my sleeve that,
Okay.
they don't know.
Okay.
My wife also doesn't even know it.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon. Uh,
Yeah.
is there? So you talked about your parenting.
Mm.
Um, is so. What are the things that you have intentionally done differently than your own dad in terms of being a
My
father?
own dad, what I've done differently. Yeah. I think when I look at, how, I was brought up and my dad not always, being around, I missed out on, that sort of bonding,
Mm,
that I was expecting, more often. We go here, we do this, we have a, man-to-man sort of talk.
yeah.
So I thought, well, I can't also be always absent, from my, kids. I've always got to, be around them, take them, places where they want to go or things that they enjoy doing. So I remember with Jerome, he said he liked, to play basketball. I thought was also going to play football, but somewhere along the line, he said, "Oh, I rather enjoy basketball." So we used to go to, basketball practice.
Mm.
Jason and Joshua football. So we used to go
Yeah.
football practice, So those are the, things that I thought, oh, I can instill in them, I can let them to know that I'm available, to let them have that confidence that, they have a dad that can take them places and they become proud of you if you do that,
Mm,
And like I said, I didn't have quite a lot of that when I was young.
mm,
So I thought I'll do that differently. And also make sure that I teach them the word of God, make them to know that there is only one truth, there is only one God, there is only one faith. And if they would have this, with them, it is like a baton I've just given to these kids.
mm.
One day they will also grow up with it. They said, oh, they'll remember it and say, oh, my dad taught us this. Because kids do not remember, do not forget anything that
Yeah.
are being taught them, by their parents. When you're talking to them, you might be thinking, oh, well, okay, they're not listening, they're not
Oh,
paying attention,
I hope
but it will
so.
register one day,
I
with
hope
them.
so.
Because you never forget anything,
Yeah.
So when I give them the baton, they would also be able to
Yeah.
pass on the baton to their, next generation. And that is what the League of Talent is all about, for kids to be able to, have a solid foundation in life, develop themselves, know their responsibilities in life, and also be able to, share with others when they also grow up.
I understand. What's one lesson you most want your children to carry with them into adulthood?
One lesson that I want.
That you most want your children to carry with them to adulthood?
Oh, okay. I think I mentioned the word humility.
Mm,
You know, I want them to be able to be out there knowing that they've got a part to play. They've got, something to give to society.
mm,
And that they wouldn't always sit down and expect to be given, but rather they want to give to others, you
mm.
see. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, in monetary, terms. Like I said, if you offer a hand to help somebody, that goes a long way to change the life of that person.
Mm.
So I always, tell them now, look, you've got a lot in you. Do not let that just lie fallow. Make sure that you are using that which is in you to bless the lives of other people.
Yeah.
And that will be a great thing or a legacy that, you can leave, because only would people talk about what you gave to them or what you were able to give out to them. And like I said, everybody that is on the surface of this earth has something in them. God did not just, bring us here on this earth as an additional number. He deposited something in each and every one of us.
Yeah.
Mm.
Love that. And if your children remember one thing about you, what would you hope that is?
I think that would be how I made them to become strong believers, in God.
Mm.
and also how I was able to shape their lives to be able to, have a voice in reaching out to people, and also to minister, if I say minister, in different forms. So whatever their capacity is, in terms of, helping, reaching out, being, doing charity works, playing, an instrument, to bless the life of somebody. I
Mm.
think that should be something notable that they would, remember me for, and also how I gave them that sort of, foundation in what they want to become in life, as they grow up.
Fair enough. And if you feel comfortable, what's one mistake that you've made as a father, and what did it teach you?
Um,
I'm trying to think, well, how would I answer this one?
yeah, trying to
Um,
think what mistake
I
was.
think for me, early on in my relationship with my son, who is number one, I
Mm,
saw him as me, and I saw me as my dad. And it's my
mm,
wife that had to come to me and say, "Look, he's not you,
mm,
and you're not your dad." And that gave me the license to, build a intentionally build a different kind of relationship with him.
yeah.
Um, so, based on who he was.
Mm,
And again, back to what I was saying before, I had to develop the ability to say, okay, no, Ayo, this you feel like this, you feel bad, you feel rejected, you feel disrespected, you feel that. Deal with that.
mm,
Then deal with your children,
yeah.
because if you're not careful, the way that you feel will spill over, and you'll be, you'll do things or say things that you wouldn't do if you had dealt with it,
Mm,
you know.
mm, yeah.
So that
Yeah. I think,
me,
yeah. For mine, I think what I did was, as we were, in the relationship with him, coming in and changing, our sort of, plans for whatever that we used to do when we were sort of, not having kids. I think after a while, because of, the ups and downs of, this very country and everything that we sort of, trying to, achieve and, get, I took my eyes off the ball a little bit, in terms of having that sort of bonding with them, So what I realized was that they were my immediate family, you
mm,
see. And life can be very lonely sometimes if you do not have anybody with you.
mm,
And it can also even, cause mental health problems,
mm,
and we sometimes, do not think about that way because you are so pressured, you are so, being tasked, to do other things, and then you just take your eyes off, your own immediate family. And I think that was one of the mistakes that I, made, earlier on when I was, sort of like, growing up with them, and I didn't, have that much time. But we thank God that we do not do this alone because
mm,
if you are a single parent, then you don't know where you're going wrong.
yeah.
So I think my wife even brought to my attention that look, they are your own. You can't just be busy out there or doing whatever
Mm,
without having that much time for them because
yeah.
the only time I had was just little that they're almost going to bed and then you just tuck him in bed and that's it. But we weren't having that sort of me time. Let's go out there and then sit somewhere and have a conversation. Let's
Yeah.
go and have a drink. Let's go and have a meal. That
Yes.
wasn't happening. So I think that was one of the mistakes that I made. And like I said, thankfully, my wife was with me. She was able to, see that. She pointed it out, and we had to, readdress it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Some of the circles that I know that we both move in terms of people who are doing business or, entrepreneurship and stuff. And it can be, especially as a man,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to create an environment that
Mm,
offers success and comfort for my family. And
mm,
it can be very easy for the focus of that or the pressure of that for me to forget my priority.
yeah.
I'm sure we all know of people who have climbed the mountain
Mm.
only to find that they're by themselves. They started with a family, and they
Yeah.
climbed. They've started a business. They've sold
Mm.
for 100 million. They've this and that. They've got all the things that some people describe in life as success.
Mm.
And they look around them, and the people they started the journey with, their family, their children, they don't have that anymore. So no, I
Yeah.
think it's really big important. I think there's something I posted on Instagram about this, like who should get the best of you. Sometimes
Mm.
we forget that in the pressure to provide. I forget that my family are my first ministry.
Mm.
And so to the point you made, like I know some people who are, let's say, in my age, so we're in our 40s now, and maybe our parents are not around. And just like you said, there is a feeling like, my parents or my dad, yeah, really poured into lots of people, and maybe, I don't recognize that he poured into me in the same way. I've had those kinds of conversations, so I can see that, you
Mm.
know, that's kind of what you're describing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
So, please, our brothers and our uncles and our fathers, please, please, please remember that your family is your
Number one priority.
first priority. And regardless of the age of your children,
Mm.
it's never too late to say, let's go for a meal, let's go for a coffee, let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
Um, because, again, as a grown man, I think I'm speaking to many other grown men,
Mm.
and they are still dealing with what they feel of as an absence in that regard. So please let's course correct if we can. Something I wanted to talk about is that, so my opinion about fatherhood specifically, especially because God identifies himself as a father in the Bible, that one of my responsibilities as a father is to represent God to my children. And for lots of children, the way they see their father is the lens through which they see God.
Yeah.
Is that something that you have thought about? And what's your relation to that thought?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I did the same, looking at my dad, as a lens, to see God because
Mm,
he took us to church. He didn't say, well, lead a life that you wanted.
mm,
When he came to church, he was serious, passionate about it.
mm,
So I saw that in him. So I also wanted to do the same, So when I came in, even before I got married, I said, I've got to build a very strong, spiritual base.
mm,
Okay. So that was what really helped me because when I left Ghana coming into the UK, where do I go? Where would I fit? How would I be able to, develop myself spiritually, to be somewhere that I believe I can also do something that
mm.
would also be good for society or for, other people.
Yeah,
So I did that, and God being so good, we married in church. I found my wife in a church. So that was also something that really, helped me, as an individual. That I think I have some sort of guidance here. I have something that I can always hold on to.
yeah,
I have someone that I can look up to, that when I do things, my kids or my children will also be able to say the same thing that they believe in coming out of me.
yeah,
So I have held on to that, up until now.
yeah,
And like we were saying before, that how do you relate to them because they're all different,
mm,
I do not do the same to everybody. Some
yeah,
people, it's just there and then we resolve issues. Some people, it will have to be the day after because I want to make them to feel comfortable in the way that I want to address issues, to them individually.
yeah,
So, like I said, anytime I wake up from sleep, I thank God for, giving me a life. And then I ask God, what would you have me do for today?
mm, mm,
So that my life or my day is already in God's hands and He's planned something for me. All I have
yeah,
to do is to just follow suit.
fantastic.
So, as much as the kids are around, we always want to do something that at least they can see God in us
Yeah,
because what they see is what they also do or they
yeah,
also learn. Yeah.
yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I think again, my view on it is that because there has been a complicated relationship with society and fathers, and my view is that this is the devil's playing a long game because
Mm,
God identifies himself as father. So, eroding an affinity for fathers will inevitably have an erosion in people's affinity for God because God uses that as a way to identify himself. And, therefore, it's such an awesome responsibility for me because, and I say awesome, not like, yay, I mean, awesome in terms of heavy, that um, God wants me to live a life that my children can look at, and
mm,
it's not, and it's a bridge to a relationship with Him rather than a barrier. For me, that's something that's heavy that I think about all the time. Like, am I living a life that is bringing my children closer to God because of me, or is my interaction with them pushing them away? Because God is a father. And
mm,
yes, they're going to have to grow up and reckon with it themselves and have their own relationship with God. But the prism or the lens that they first will interact is me. So again, I can't just do what I want to do. I have to, like, you said it a number of times, become a different person, the kind of
yeah,
person that my children can use as a anchor towards God
yeah,
rather than away. Uh,
yeah.
so I have a few more questions and I'll let you go. I'm so honored for your time. I don't want to I want to take everything from you. So you've how do you deal with the concept of like relationships and the future and stuff in that, like, what's your approach?
Relationship to my children, or
No, so like your children, they're all boys, they're growing up.
yeah.
I'm assuming that one day you're going to be wanting to attend their weddings, and so has there been conversations about that kind of thing with them? I know that they're all at different stages.
Yes, I think for the first two, we've had conversations on that, because I told them, that there were many things that I wish I'd done differently, somewhere along the line when I was growing up, from my teenage years. So the main reason this platform of the League of Talents and Abilities came through, so that they can be able to know how to divide those 3 sevens, of their lives.
Mm.
Okay. That when you are 14 to 21, there are so many things you've got to, achieve in life or to do in life, building yourself up to become, a young adult.
Yeah,
And then also after that, you've been now be thinking about, what is my career base? What do I want to do? Or what have I planned to do with
yeah.
myself as I'm growing up?
Mhm.
And then also going into relationships and things like that. So we've had conversations on that, and I've said to
And
them,
if I can interject, like these conversations, are you initiating them or are they initiating with you? Are they uncomfortable or is it like, okay, we've just created an environment where we can openly talk?
I think it's an open environment where we can talk, but sometimes it depends on the sort of topic that you're coming up with. They become a bit uncomfortable because
Yeah,
bear in mind maybe they weren't expecting to go down that line of
yeah, yeah,
conversation. So I think ideally it is good that they come out with something that they've been thinking about,
yeah.
and
Okay.
then when they are not sure, you direct them and say, oh well, okay, this is how you've got to approach it. What is your mind telling you? Are you prepared? Have you got what it takes? Do you have the capacity now to
Yeah,
be indulging, in things like that? So most of the times I leave it to them to see their level of maturity, but I open their mind to one or two things, in terms of the negativity aspect of, what it can lead you to if you are not prepared or you
okay.
haven't really made up your mind
Yeah,
to,
okay.
get into it. So I think, like I said, they're all different. Some will take it on board, but then you've got to work on them. Make them to understand that at least they can really trust what you are saying,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it will be good and helpful for them. Because when they go out with friends and everybody's saying their bit when they haven't even got the experience in
yeah.
that, they'll rather want to follow what friends are saying rather than what parents are saying. You
Mm.
know.
So
So,
in terms of like parenting and fatherhood, what is your view on what success is as a father? What's your view? So what does it look like?
I think success as a father with kids, you know, is to see that you have been able to bring out the best in your children, or you have given them that, foundation that they need in life, knowing what they want to do, where they want to get to, and how they are working their way towards that.
Yeah.
I was sharing with a brother, and I'm not just going to digress on what we're saying. But then, when people talk about success, they're always thinking about finances.
Mm.
And it is part of it, but it is not all the success that, a father or a parent would, want to have. Because what would be the essence of you having the finances and then your kids do not listen to anything you say? They
Yeah.
are aware what are they doing, what they want to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't really, give you that inner peace that you want, because
Yeah.
it is only just part of it. But you would rather, see that they have a solid base, they have the confidence, because Bible says in the book of Hebrews in 10:35
Mm.
that we should not cast away our confidence that we have in Christ. For
Mm.
it says that after that we have done the will of the Master, doing the will of God, we shall receive our reward or promise. Okay,
Mm.
so I think if they would have any reward of success, or you as a parent having a reward of success, is to
Yeah.
see that you have nurtured your children or
Yeah.
your child
Yeah.
in the way that they should go,
Yeah.
because that becomes successful to you
Yeah.
as your responsibility, doing the right thing for what God has blessed you with.
Yeah.
Mm.
And as we're winding down, I want you to think back now. So you are a seasoned man. You've been married for some time. You have an 18-year-old. So you've been a father for 19 years.
Yeah.
If you were to go back and speak to your 20-year-old self, still finding his way in the world, you know, there are some nuggets that you know now that you didn't know then. So what if you were to meet 20-year-old Brother Dan, who would you what would you say? What advice would you give?
Our advice I would give to my 20-year-old self was, or would be that I would value the life that God has given to me,
Mm.
to make sure that I am making every single moment count.
Mm.
Because I have, thrown away a good chunk of years not valuing that life. And if I had done that, things would have been different, for me by now.
Yeah, okay.
And that is also something that I've said to them, that every moment of your life really counts. And time is an expensive commodity.
Mm.
That time lost cannot be gained that easily.
Yep.
So we've got to really, look at ourselves, value this life that God has given to us,
Mm.
through ourselves into it, embracing that grace that is upon us today.
Mm.
Because Bible says that we have no power of our own. It is God that is able to make us to do everything that we do in our lives today. And if God was today to take the air that we breathe out of us, then we become like vegetables, you
Mm.
see. So I look up unto God and I said, Father, I thank you that I am still in existence. And you spared me, of all these years, 20
Yeah.
years back or 25 years back, 30 years back. You spared me because you had a plan for me.
Mm.
And that is why I make sure that I am doing whatever it takes for me to be able to still stay responsible, for
Mm.
me to still stay under the confines of God's, anointing and grace, so that
Yeah.
I can be able to also do the same for my younger generation.
Fantastic, fantastic. And so let's go back to you as a young father. So again,
Mm.
19 years ago, you didn't know anything.
Yeah,
You just
yeah.
a baby. If you were to talk to yourself then, you've just had a baby, what would you tell yourself?
I would first inquire wisdom of God,
Mm.
and to say, the Lord, I need wisdom to become a responsible father. I need wisdom to have a planner for life, not just for myself, but also for the children that you are about giving to me.
Yeah.
I also need that spirit of humility to be able to relate to my wife or my other half so that we have that strong union.
Mm.
Because I believe, like I said, this work is for the two.
Mm.
That's what the Bible says, that man and wife or man and woman will leave their father and mother's house, they will come together as one.
Mm.
So I would say to myself that everything is in God's hands. I submit that authority because I think at the time, like I was saying before, that I was young, I didn't know what to do. I also didn't know that I had to really, put everything in God's hands for God to give direction. I thought I could do certain things by my own judgment, by my own thinking, and by the way I look at things.
Yeah.
But then I would rather, place everything in God's hands for Him to give us direction and
Yeah.
where we need to go.
That's fantastic. Now, I'm conscious of the fact that there's some people listening to this, and they're either, so your dad was in the house, my dad was in the house, our fathers were present. But so some people who were listening and they didn't have a present father, either because the dad
Mm,
was then not present or the dad was absent from the home. And we're talking about fathers, and Father's Day sometimes can be a challenging time, especially for people who don't have a pleasant
mm.
memory. What would you say to these people, as a father and as somebody who sees God as father? What would you say to them? So first off, talk to a young person who whose dad hasn't been around, and then talk to a father who is now a father, has a child, but also dad wasn't around. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so I think firstly to the one that was young and didn't have the father around, I would say that it is, and I can see, in my own eyes that it would have been a very, challenging experience, for you not to have a parent, around all the time when you needed one. But then also you would take solace that God knows the end from the beginning. So although that person didn't have a father, physical father around, God was around with that person. And God had, intended that that person would be able to receive whatever that they had hoped for. Probably maybe it might not be within that same, environment or circumstances. Maybe things have delayed a little bit. But what I want to say that they would take courage because God is still their earthly, I mean, their supreme, God and Father. And I pray that, whatever that they've missed out, God has great plans for them and will be able to, do great things in their lives as, they hold on to Him. What
Mm.
I'll also say to one that is a father now
Mm.
and they didn't have a father, when he was young, was that I think God works in mysterious ways.
Mm.
And God has been able to change certain things about them. Now that they are fathers in their own right or respect, they should be able to, change the narrative, and to be able to go the extra mile, to be more present, for their wards or children, so that at least what they missed out, not having with their father shouldn't be replicated with them. But rather they would do something more that would form that base because there are a lot of things that have changed with my, sort of lineage when I was growing up. So that they would also be able to change that so that their children and their children's children will also to be able to be accommodative and be around, for their, their kids.
Yeah. So that's such a good answer. Thank you so much for that. I would second that. If that wasn't around, please don't. I would say please don't judge God by the standard
Mm,
of your dad if you feel that he dropped the ball. God's a great father. I can attest to that. And I would strongly encourage you to seek Him as such.
mm,
And brother, and I want to thank you so much for your time. I've been listening, and you don't realize, how many nuggets you've just been dropping, 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 dropping,
mm,
dropping. You've mentioned becoming a different person. I think that's so important in terms of life. The person like, I should change. The advice never changes. Stupid,
mm,
because at 20, I didn't know the world at all in the same way as I do now that I'm in my 40s. Um, so it's important to to change, and I
yeah.
like the fact that you were intentional about it. Sometimes we let life buffet us and the change that we need becomes a reaction to the stress. Whereas what I've heard from you is that you were a deep thinker enough to say, okay, this issue is happening. Who do I need to be to make a success of the situation? So, people listening out there, a wise man solves a problem before it becomes an issue. Really, and I like the concept of, when you said man marking, you can't do exactly the same to every child if you're a father of multiple children.
Yeah.
You have to, you've made it very clear that, God has put something in these children. So you have to then, your job as dad is, okay, so what's in this child? And how do I then help them develop, almost like a coach? Your father, who is around, I suppose, is the first life coach you ever had. And father, that's how you should see yourself. And just being intentional about showing our children the principles of the Word of God, because the Word says, teach a child the ways he should go, and when he's older, he won't depart. My trainer child, I'll end on this. My wife helped me with this, because one time we were having a conversation and we're like, these children don't listen. I'm like, it isn't that. And she said, like, but what is training? If you think about Usain Bolt, he trained for 4 years to run for less than 12 seconds. less than 10 seconds. So training is the repetitive realignment of, okay, no, that's good, no,
do it that way.
In which case it involves repetition. Please, fathers out there, don't be weary of well-doing. It's important to keep consistent. And the thing that older fathers have said to me is that one day they'll thank you. And I can attest to that in my own life. I'm very grateful for the lessons that I've learned from my father. I'm very grateful for the things that I learned from my parents, even though I didn't enjoy it at the time in some situations.
Yeah, we all did.
But here we are. So thank you for listening, everybody. Brother Dan, I'm grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome. What we'll do is I'm going to put all the information on the screen so that you can engage with the League of Talents and Abilities. Maybe you want to join if you're listening and you're young, or maybe you want to send your children, so that this just resonates with you as a place, because it does take a village to raise a child. But till next time, guys, have a great day. We'll see you later.
Thank you.